Welcome back to the channel for a different kind of video than what I typically do. First of all, there is no guitar playing in this video, but I'm linking below many great videos from great channels with sound samples of the Fender Standard Series. So I've had the opportunity to play a Standard Series, and I just wanted to weigh in my thoughts on the whole situation that has so gripped the online guitar community. So a little background. I've been playing for about 20, this I think will make 25 years later this year. When I first started playing, the original Mexican Standard Series was in its heyday. My main and favorite guitar to this day is a heavily modified 1992 Fender Standard Telecaster. Now, in those days, which I got the guitar used in 2001, they were poplar bodies. They weren't even string through, and they had stock ceramic pickups. Later on, as the Standard Series evolved, they would eventually have a string through design on the tellies, alder bodies, and they always kept the ceramic pickups in the most basic forms of the guitars until they were replaced by the Player series about 8 or 9 years ago. So that being said, the fact that the new standard guitars have poplar bodies and ceramic pickups really is a hearkening back to the original standard. So a lot has been said about what those guitars are and what they are not. I have, over the years, probably at one time or another, not all at once, owned over 20 Fender and Squier Telecasters and Stratocasters. The Standard Series, as it is today, is definitely not just a souped-up Affinity. In their own rights, they are perfectly fine guitars. They are incredibly standard guitars. I think that's sort of echoing what Ryan on 60 Cycle Hum said. They are really the most standard Fender Telecasters and Stratocasters you can get. I think that the classic vibe, in some ways, if you're looking for something vintage, is demonstrably better in terms of features. And again, features are features. How that comes together in the actual functional package is up to you, the player, and your own opinions. But for example, the Squier Classic vibes tend to have a bone nut instead of the micarta nut on the Standard Series, which is cheap. And again, this is a personal preference thing. The Classic vibes have a less expensive version of the classic tuning machines. And another thing that's just a matter of taste, I actually prefer the two-post vibrato systems. The Classic vibes have the 6-screw. The more modern versions in the Standard, I believe, have the two-post trim. If that's wrong, it's going across the bottom of the screen right now. But that's actually my preference. But again, that's not a better or worse thing. But there are ways in which you can definitively say a classic vibe is better. And classic vibe, and here's probably my biggest actual complaint with the Standard Series, usually has nicer matched, at least, wood grain. The one true negative, and it's only cosmetic, I see about the Standard. Personally, if I were Fender, I would have not made any transparent colors using the poplar. Not because the poplar's not known for having extremely attractive grain, but most of the videos you'll see there are 3- and 4-piece poplar bodies on the sunburst colors and the butterscotch somewhat transparent Telecasters, and that just frankly looks cheap. It does not affect playability or anything of that nature, but the Classic vibes, I have seen Classic vibes that have been mistaken for much more expensive guitars in guitar shops by the staff because the grain is so attractive. Purely cosmetic, but that matters to some people. But that being said, and Landon Bailey has a great video comparing the tellies in the Standard Series Fender and the Squier Affinity, which I've linked below. They are not just souped up affinities with Fender on the headstock instead of Squier. Definitely similarities between the guitars, but they are perfectly fine. I think that if I was, and let me say too that I did some math adjusted for inflation. When I started playing, the standard Mexican series was about $350 roughly. I think it was like $325 for solid colors and $350 for sunburst at that very specific point in time. If you do the inflation math on it, that's almost exactly what it comes out to, a little more than $600. So it's about 1 for 1. So in fairness, you can't say they're that much more expensive. But I think that the standard series is fantastic for someone who, for their second guitar, because $600 is a lot for someone to spend on their first guitar, wants, especially a young player who wants a real Fender. That doesn't matter nearly as much to me now as it did back when I was young and learning to play. But when I got my black Fender Telecaster, that was a huge deal to me because I'd had a Rogue by Squier HSS Strat, which actually was really nice looking back for the price. But I wanted a Tele and I wanted a Fender. So for that person, a classic vibe or another brand might not satisfy them. I'd say go for it. The big thing, and others have noted this as well, that I think makes the standard series appealing is as a mod platform. Because as many of you know, and some may not, Squiers tend to use metric measurements on their parts. Player series made in Mexico and American Fenders have imperial measurements. I did a video series a couple years ago, my Squier Bullet Telecaster upgrade series, which I discussed that in length, and I knew going in that was going to be one of the issues wanting to upgrade it. Not all the parts, like for example, the pickups will still fit fine, but the pot sizes tend to be different. If you have a Strat, you might have to remount, in some cases, the pick guard or get a new pick guard. The tuning machines, especially the more expensive, or the less expensive Squiers, rarely match up with the nicer tuning machines you want to put in. And one of my personal least favorite things, as someone who's worked on these guitars for over 20 years just for the fun of it, is drilling holes in the headstock. I just hate doing that. It seems like it never goes well for me. I mean, even if it ends up looking good in the end, it's just a pain. I just don't like doing it. But the standard series Fenders, I've not gotten to confirm this myself, not really having one here at home, but I've linked the Get Offset video in which she talks about this. I've linked to that below, are imperial, which means if you want to put good, high-quality Fender or equivalent parts on the standard series, they should be 1 for 1 matches. Now, granted, with the tuning machines, there's different styles of tuning machines, so they still might not match up. But the really cheap Squier tuning machines, in my experience, never match with anything good. Never. That might evolve as time goes by, but that's a giant pain. And it's also a pain if you have a Strat style guitar or something where the pots are on the pick guard and it doesn't fit through the hole properly, and then your knobs don't fit properly. But anyway, those are minor things, but that would make modding it a lot easier. Personally, I have had my fill of major modding projects for the time being, other than small tweaks. If I was going to mod something, say I wanted to mod, and also the Telecasters have an HS8, or rather an SSH route under the pick guard to go along with the bridge, so that would give you a lot of pickup options. But if I was modding something, especially a Tele, which is my greatest area of expertise, I would get probably the blue standard series Telecaster. Start with a good solid base, since it's a solid color. The mismatched poplar pieces wouldn't bother me. Everyone can argue to the end of time about tone woods. My personal opinion is that they make a difference, but an extremely small difference, and not one to be enough to care about. But in all the videos I've watched in my own experience, my biggest complaint with the standard series echoes what Phil McKnight has to say. There is no reason rather, other than as a mod platform, to want the standard series if you're a longtime player that already has a few nice Telecasters and Stratocasters. There is nothing special about those guitars rather, at all. And that's my biggest complaint about it. I understand Ryan at 60 cycle hum is 100% right, I believe. Let's say an experiment might be a little too extreme, but Fender is trying to see if they can sell $600 made in Indonesia Fenders that are as basic as they can get away with. I'm not faulting them for that. Again, I don't want to talk about global politics or economics, but with things going on in the world, there's a lot up in the air to how much it might cost to import and export things. And this is an attempt by Fender to try something new. And to that extent, I applaud them. But that being said, there is no reason for an experienced player, again, other than a mod platform, who already has a nice Telecaster or Stratocaster to say, ooh, I'm going to get the standard series. Because when I first saw they were announced, my first thought was, ooh, I want to get one and do a video about them. Then I read about them and saw a couple of the very early videos. Like, well, there's nothing wrong with these, but there's nothing nice about them. Nothing bad, really, in terms of function. But, for example, I did just a few days before I made this video, I did a video about this guitar. The new Ibanez AZ made in China, HSS Strat style guitar, obviously. But it has, for $549 US, so $50 less, and this is made in China instead of Indonesia, you get a roasted maple neck, stainless steel frets, and locking tuners. That gives someone like me, who owns way too many guitars already, a reason to give this guitar a try, because this is the first time I'm aware of one of the major brands is offering all these features in one guitar at this price point. And I had some nice discussion, some more intelligent than others, in the comments on my video on this guitar. And I'm not, and I do talk a decent amount in that video about a one-for-one comparison about the HSS standard Strat in this. But this is exactly what I'm talking about. Because typically all these features in one guitar would only be found in the super budget brands, something like a Firefly or an eArt or something like that. So to get it in an Ibanez at that price point is quite appealing, and something that even someone who has many other guitars and more expensive guitars might want to give a try. I'm not saying that the standard series should have all those features, but maybe the standard series had one of those features, or instead of a micarta nut had a Graphtec nut, or had pickups that I believe Phil McKnight said this, and I thought this was a great point. PRS in their SE line has S versions of their American pickups in their overseas line, which is Indonesia and might even be the exact same factory, which I'm guessing is probably Cortec. But so you have the 8515S set, which is almost identical in sound to the nicer American-made ones, which are made out of nicer parts. It might sound just the slightest bit better. So say what a Fender would have said, they're basically doing their S equivalent of, say, Twisted Telly pickups, or Texas Specials, or Fat 50s, and I'm not saying those exactly. That Phil McKnight's, I think that would have been great. Something to give people a reason to buy it, because for $500, you can get a PRS SE CE with the 8515S humbuckers, I think that's for the satin finish one, I think off the top of my head, with a gig bag. That is something, if you don't have a guitar like that, even if you have a $3,000 Les Paul Standard at home, you might say, that's interesting to me, and I'm going to try that out. So I think to that extent, I think the standard series is a missed opportunity. But I do think that it will be interesting to see how much they really sell for. In a comment on one of the videos, somebody said that, and then just watch when it, like at Christmas time, when these guitars are like $450, $470 American dollars on sale, and that's exactly right. Now, $600, I wouldn't be interested in trying one. I saw one on sale in a nice color for $450. That might be a different story. So I think Fender will sell a boatload of these. I do wish they would have done just something to make them a little more appealing to the player who might have higher end guitars in their collection. But I do not think they're bad guitars. I think to the extent they've been unfairly criticized. I think they sound perfectly fine. I think the Player Series, and that's another thing I just wanted to add. In a perfect example, I was talking about giving you some reason to want them. The Player Series, the Player 1 we'll call it, were really nice guitars. I had the British Racing Green Tele with the stock Seymour Duncan quarter pounders, which unfortunately I had to sell to fund other things. But I loved that guitar, I thought it was amazing. Then Player 2 came out. And this isn't a huge thing, but the thing about Player 2 was, forget about the Pal Faro from when we had the CITES problems, we're going back to rosewood. And you had different colors, and the Jaguar was more vintage, wasn't a humbucker one. They gave you things that maybe if you already had a Player Strat or Tele, you weren't going to run out and buy a Player 2. But if you didn't and had kind of been thinking about one, there were things to make you say, oh, there's something I might like. I might get one of those. And the chambered mahogany and chambered ash Telecasters, and I'm not sure what would, but the chambered Strat, I would love to try. I just haven't had room, frankly, in the budget, since I pay for all these things myself, to try one out. But that gives you a reason to want to try it. There's no reason like that for someone like me to want to try the standard series at this time. And by like me, again, someone who's been playing for 25 years, but I have a full-time job. This is not my job. I've never made a dime off of one of these videos. I like to release my own music just because I love doing it. I like to play locally. I wish I could do more, but that's just not in the musical world, but that's just not my life. So coming from that perspective, I wanted to share that in addition to all the professional YouTubers and professional, I don't know what the proper term would be for Lee Anderton, but people who selling guitars and playing music and doing YouTube videos is their livelihood. It is not for me. I'm just someone who does all this literally for the fun of it and because I love doing it. So those are my thoughts. Please leave yours below. As long as they are constructive, we will have a nice conversation. If they are not, I'm usually not very nice. But I would welcome a constructive conversation about this. Let me know if the standard series is something you're going to try. And maybe one day if I see one on sale or I suddenly come into a bunch of extra money, I'll shoot one out. But for now, I think that those are great guitars for a mod platform and for a young player moving up in the world, but maybe not most appealing for experienced players with a bunch of guitars. So that being said, I hope you all are having a good day wherever you might be in the world. Stay safe, and until next time, keep on rocking.